Subscribe to my channel or you'll be terminated. Do it now. Limited time. Do it. Alright guys, we're gonna review Terminator, the first one, the original, the OG Terminator. Everybody knows this movie. What can I say about it? I never actually saw this one. I didn't know much about the first Terminator when I was younger during Arnold's heyday. In the beginning, I think the first movie I saw with Arnold was Commando, and I actually used to call him Commando before I even knew that his name was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I would see Arnold and be like, hey, that's Commando. Yeah, Terminator, everybody knows the story, but I'll give you a quick overview of it. Humanity creates an AI system called Skynet, and in the future it ends up basically becoming self-aware, becoming sentient, and then it controls the world's nuclear weapons, and it ends up, or the United States, North America, and then it ends up firing when it realizes that the humans are going to shut it down because they're starting to worry that it's becoming too powerful, and it ends up launching a preemptive strike and causing a world war, and basically the whole world becomes like post-apocalyptic. So what ends up happening was, in the future, the resistance is being led by John Connor, who is the son of Sarah Connor. So because they're fighting the war in the future and the humans are starting to gain ground, the Terminators, the Skynet, uses I guess a time machine or a portal or something to send back a Terminator into the 80s to kill the mother of the resistance fighter, John Connor, so to kill his mother before he's even born. So the Terminators send back Arnold Schwarzenegger, Skynet sends back Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the resistance sends back his father, Kyle Reese, he becomes his father. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly if you think about it that way. But they send back a soldier named Kyle Reese, who ends up becoming the guy's father. So if you actually look at that point too much, the whole time travel thing unravels. But basically, Skynet sends back the Terminator, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, the T-100, and the Resistance sends back Kyle Reese. So the whole question now becomes, who's going to get to her first? Is the Terminator going to get to her, or is Kyle Reese going to get to her to save her? So the movie is, again, like some of the other movies that I've reviewed, like Predator. It's a pretty simple story. It's actually a giant kind of a chase scene, but it's very interesting at the same time. Yeah, it's a giant chase scene, and they ends up that they kind of both find her at the exact same time. Luckily, Kyle Reese saves her at a dance bar right before the Terminator tries to execute her, and then for the rest of the movie, they're running away from him, and he's pursuing them. That's the whole story. What makes the movie so good is obviously James Cameron's direction, his eye for certain shots, how they're done, and the story. The story is cool. That's pretty much it for the story. So what's to like about this movie, and what are some things that I kind of know about it that make it really interesting? Actually, the Terminator, the endoskeleton that's underneath the Arnold skin tissue, it was a nightmare that Jim Cameron had. He had a nightmare about this like metallic robotic being with red eyes, and he took that and he went with it, and he turned it into a movie. So with this, what's really interesting is James Cameron, by the way, is Canadian, and you'd know him from Terminator, Aliens, Terminator 2, The Abyss, True Lies, Titanic, and then the Avatar movies. I might have missed something in there, but those are pretty much the big ones. And again, my favorite movie of his is still Aliens, which came out after this. So what happened was, he was a special effects guy. He was actually a truck driver at first, Canadian truck driver. And then he was a special effects guy. He worked on a movie called Piranha 2 or something like that. He also did work, he wrote the screenplay for Rambo Part 2, First Blood Part 2 with Sylvester Stallone. So he did a few different things in Hollywood before he became a director. and then they offered him this movie, and then he directed it. And while he was directing this, he had an offer for Aliens, and I believe he also wrote it. He wrote the script for Aliens, but he wanted to direct it, and the studio said, if your Terminator movie does well, then we'll let you direct Aliens. And Terminator, this movie ended up doing very well. It established Arnold Schwarzenegger as a huge movie star, and it established James Cameron as a guy that can do a lot with a little. Not a huge budget, but he did a lot with that budget. And yeah, the ship sailed from there. Stan Winston again, earlier in his career, does the practical effects for the Terminator endoskeleton and for the makeup effects of Arnold. There are a couple of scenes in here where they're really interesting. They're really well done, where Arnold is like, you know, his metallic endoskeleton is damaged, so he has to cut his tissue open and repair it. There's a scene where he has to pull his eye out because his eye is gone now. Little details too that are really interesting. Like, for example, there's a scene where I guess the flesh is kind of, because it's damaged, it's kind of rotting almost. So there's a scene where he's sitting in a hotel and there's like flies sit on his skin, which I never even noticed before until I watched the movie before this review. Strongest parts of the movie are the direction, the cinematography, and the pacing. What I'm not really a big fan of, and some people are going to probably maybe hate me for it, is the music. The music in this movie is, there's certain kinds of music that's from the 80s that's you can tell it's 80s when you hear it, but it's still good. Like, for example, the opening theme. The main theme for the Terminator is still good. It's actually very interesting. If you listen to it, it's a heartbeat, but a metallic heartbeat. So it's like the heart of a machine. That's really, really cool. But the music within the movie, certain scenes, it's very dated, and I'm not a huge fan of it. Some of the music the other music that's included in the movie, like in the club scenes and stuff, that stuff's really cool. But yeah, it's a very simple movie. I would classify this as a sci-fi horror film, whereas the second one is a sci-fi action film. It's so interesting the way Jim Cameron does this, because like even with Aliens, he hasn't done this. He only did it with like he did Terminator 1 and 2. He did that flip. But he also did it when he directed Aliens, because the first Alien was like this. It was a sci-fi horror movie. And then when he did Aliens, the second one, he turned it into a sci-fi action film, which is what Terminator 2 is as well, which we will review that one. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about this. It's what made Arnold a huge movie star, if you consider, I mean, in addition to Conan the Barbarian, which launched him, but this one really cemented him. Arnold was originally wanted to play the Reese character, Kyle Reese, the Savior, but for some reason, James Cameron, like when they were discussing the role and stuff like that, he said, you know what, like, you know so much about this Terminator, you'd actually be really good. But Arnold wasn't a fan didn't want to do that, because he was like, man, like, this character has like barely any words, like I'm going backwards here as an actor. But James Cameron convinced him to take on the role, and it worked really well for him, because he got paid a fortune for Terminator 2 and 3. And Terminator 2 Judgment Day is still considered to be one of the greatest movies ever made to come out of Hollywood. It's very timeless. So yeah, that's Terminator for you. Let me know what you think about the movie. I give this one, again, I like Terminator 2 better, but this movie is good. So I would give this one probably 4 out of 5 biceps. I wouldn't, you know, it could be 4.5, whatever, but, you know, I'd say about 4. It's still not as good as the second one, but to be the second or the first movie to come out of his directing career is astonishing. You can see in the beginning of the movie and later throughout the movie his talent for special effects, for in-camera effects. You know, with the in the beginning future scenes with the Skynet, the I can't remember the name of the ships that fly around. Very similar to actually what he does in Aliens as well. And Hicks, played by sorry, Hicks in the Hicks character in Aliens is the guy that plays Kyle Reese in this one, and he looks very similar in both movies in the kind of the gear played by Michael Biehn, the gear that he wears. But yeah, if you haven't seen Terminator, you should watch it. It's a historical piece of cinema. And then go right away to Terminator 2, and it's, you know, they're both linked pretty closely, so I would advise that. Not good for kids. Terminator 2 is actually probably much more kid friendly. This one's a lot darker. Like I said, it's more of like a horror movie. But yeah, Terminator, you have been terminated. Arrgh. Tell me what you think. Please click like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.